One of the constant pieces of advice that I give to people is to keep a journal. Basically, anytime anyone asks me for any kind of advice, journaling is a part of that advice. I've been journaling for about a decade, and I think that it increases my mental clarity, or at least my sense of like where I am in the world. It also helps me preserve memories. I love being able to look back at my old journals. But also when you're this used to journaling, it just is fun. Journaling is a source of pleasure and even contentment in my life. But there's lots of different ways that you could journal, and that's what I want to talk about today. Journaling in its simplest form just involves opening up a notebook or getting on your computer or using whatever tool you'd like and writing. In a previous video where I've talked about different types of journaling, I called this free writing. I actually think that maybe that's not the most helpful term anymore. So let's just call it traditional journaling. It really is the simplest kind of journaling in that you can get started even if you just have a piece of paper or you pick up the notes app on your phone and you just want to start typing. There are no rules, there are no guidelines, there is no way to do this wrong, but the cons for this approach are pretty obvious. If you are someone who is struggling to get started, so you're having a really hard time when you look at the blank page, you know maybe you have some thoughts but you don't know how to articulate them, then traditional journaling might be the worst kind of journaling for you to start with, and that's simply because you're not going to know actually how to begin. Getting started, taking those first few steps, maybe doing it for a few weeks to build a habit, that's really the hardest part of building a journaling habit. If you do it long enough, eventually it just becomes second nature and you'll never want to stop. So figuring out how you can get started is really crucial. And if you're someone who is maybe struggling to get started, maybe look at some of my other suggestions, like my narrative method. This is a method that I outlined in a video called How to Journal Like a Philosopher. You might have seen it, and if you haven't, there's a link down below. Basically, I give you a 4-part format in order to try to just get you writing about your day and about your life more generally. You start by just writing about something that happened that day, some kind of event or something that occurred. Then you write a paragraph about what you think you did well or what you're proud of in that moment. Then you write another paragraph about what didn't go well or what you're not proud of in that moment. So basically you have a success and a failure. And then you generalize in the last paragraph or more. You could even write a page, write as much as you'd like. You start writing actually about how this fits into the overall narrative of your life. Now that you've kind of gotten the wheels turning because you've just written about something that happened and you've analyzed it a little bit in those other 2 paragraphs, you're able now to just let the thoughts flow and really think more about your life as a whole. I like this method a lot. It's the one that I rely on the most. And I like it because it transforms our understanding of our lives from an episodic nature, meaning we just take individual episodes as their own contained events, like they have no connection to each other. And it really lets us consider our lives more like a narrative or a story that we're telling. A narrative understanding of your life actually helps you make progress on goals if that's what you're trying to do. If you're into any kind of self-improvement, then understanding your life as a narrative is really useful. But also it just seems to make it more fun. And thinking of myself kind of as the main character in a little story, even if it's one of the least important stories in the world that's ever been told, helps me think about my life in a way that I found really useful. This method of journaling is a lot like traditional journaling. I've just added a little bit of structure to help get you started or to help you fall back on something when the words just aren't flowing. I also just think it's a good tool for self-reflection. And if that's your main goal in journaling, then maybe this method would be useful for you. If you want more details, check out that other video. But if those 2 methods are still too unstructured, then I'm going to suggest that you try a guided journal. The one that a lot of viewers of my channel know about is Ryan Holiday's Daily Stoic Journal. This has quotes from the Stoics or different writers in history, some passages, and some reflections, and then it gives you space to write about your day and your week. What you're doing is using those quotes and those passages as a kind of way to inspire yourself to write. You are writing in response to the prompts. Talking to people who have used that particular journal, they seem to really like it for 2 reasons. One, just the quality of the quotes is good. The Stoics are very inspirational. You know that I think that if you've watched any other videos on my channel. But also I think having like those daily prompts really is going to get you into a habit. You know, from what I can tell, it takes anywhere from like 3 weeks to 3 months to really establish a strong habit. Guided journals usually last at least that long, so you can really just get in the habit of journaling. Maybe once you fill up one of these guided journals, you're going to want to move on to another kind of journaling, but by then, journaling is a part of who you are. Another guided journal you might want to check out is All the Ways Things Could Go, which is released by Pursuit of Wonder. Pursuit of Wonder are sponsoring this video, and they sent me their journal to check out and to share with you. If you like philosophy content on YouTube, and I'm sure many viewers of my channel do, then you've probably heard about Pursuit of Wonder. They make these videos that are all about sort of just the beauty of existence. Robert Pantano, who is the writer and creator behind Pursuit of Wonder, has put together this journal that's going to help you think about your life from many different perspectives, actually. This is a multimedia journal. This means that some days you're going to write. Maybe you're just going to write about your life. Some days you're going to write a story, maybe not even from your perspective. There was one exercise I liked in this a lot, actually, and in that exercise, you had to take on the perspective of someone that you like to hang out with, and you write a story from their perspective of them hanging out with you. And that seemed to me like a really interesting exercise to get you out of your own head and to think about the people that you regularly interact with. You also will sometimes draw. There are drawing challenges. Sometimes he asks you to switch between your right hand and your left hand, from your dominant hand to your non-dominant hand, just to kind of make you think a little bit differently as you're working stuff out on the page. This is a 145-page journal, and I think it really is ideal for anybody who likes a lot of variety in their journaling practice. Anyone who gets bored easily by writing in the same kind of style or format over and over could check out this journal, and I think they would get a lot out of it. If you're interested in this journal, there is a link down below. I'd really appreciate it if you checked it out. And I just want to thank Pursuit of Wonder once again for sponsoring this video. If you're looking for something that's just on the radically minimalist side, then you might want to try just keeping a daily log. I'm basically cribbing this idea from the bullet journaling. Bullet journaling is a practice that I've tried. I've never been able to really sustain. And I think the problem is that I've always tried to make it too complicated. I've tried to make my bullet journal do too much. Let's just simplify it down to just the daily log. So basically, in your daily log, you're going to write about your task and certain events that occur, and you're just going to keep track of them. And then at the end of every day, you can review those tasks and events, and then you can write a little bit about what went well or what didn't well. You have just maybe a paragraph for reflection. There's an art to keeping a daily log. I kind of worry that you can become fanatical about it, where you want to obsess over how every single minute is spent. That is certainly how I tend to be, and it's usually why I burn out, and then I'm not able to keep up this kind of bullet journaling practice at all. I would also maybe try to categorize the time that you're spending. So think about things that you do for work, think of things that you do for family and friends, for your own meaningful projects that you're pursuing, your hobbies or something like this, and try to maybe separate those out so we can just really keep in perspective how much of your mental bandwidth is taken up with work, how much of it could be redirected to things that you care about more, how much of it is wasted on, frankly, bullshit. The daily log, it seems to me, is a way to almost kind of ease yourself or trick yourself into journaling, because at first it looks a lot just like you're time tracking, and then you start doing these reflections, and then eventually those reflections are going to impact actually the kinds of things you do, so that's going to change what your future daily logs look like. There's a kind of nice almost like recursion or kind of feedback loop that can happen when you keep a daily log and do a daily reflection. I suppose people could also try mood tracking. There was recently a video from Matt D'Avella, a YouTuber who I watch quite a bit, where he tried mood tracking every day for a year. I walked away from that video thinking that mood tracking could be useful for some people. Matt talks about in his video a few of the particular problems that he had with mood tracking. Doing it in a handwritten notebook didn't really seem to work out that well for him. Also, the numbers could kind of feel arbitrary unless you also combined it with a daily log. So maybe mood tracking and a daily log somehow can work together very well. Matt's also kind of a numbers guy. He really likes to track things. He's all about like self-improvement and personal development. And again, my worry that with mood tracking, just like with the daily log, we can just become a little bit fanatical about it in a way that's actually counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish. Like, it is actually going to inhibit our goals rather than help us get there. Now, a very popular kind of journaling is called gratitude journaling. Basically, what you do here is you write about things that you're grateful for. And I'm going to say I really like the spirit of gratitude journaling in that I think practicing gratitude, meaning making yourself realize just how fortunate you are and have all the things that you might need to be grateful for, is a very powerful practice. An example that I love to talk about is that in the first notebook of the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, he is basically just doing a gratitude journal. He is just talking about the things that fate has given him, but that he does not deserve. So I don't want to besmirch the idea of practicing gratitude. What I worry about with a gratitude journal is that it becomes too focused only on gratitude. Maybe for some people that is really what you need. If gratitude journaling has worked well for you, I would honestly love to hear about it down in the comments, because I just can't see the appeal of only talking about gratitude. Once again, if I totally misunderstand this or if I'm missing the mark, let me know down below. But if people are asking me what kind of journaling should they do, gratitude journaling is not typically on my list. One kind of journaling that I find helpful, though I don't do it every day, could just be called a brain dump. This is actually one of the few kinds of journaling, by the way, where I prefer to use a digital tool. I actually use an iPad app. I use Freeform. It's built into all your Apple stuff these days. And I use it because I just want kind of an expandable canvas to just get my ideas out on the page when I'm doing a brain dump. Sometimes when I have just too many ideas floating around, or I'm not quite sure what I want to say, I just need a space where I can just write and draw and sketch and make connections and just do whatever I want. The Freeform app just kind of worked very well for me. I'm sure there are lots of other apps that you could use. Another similar practice to the brain dump, but it's just for words, it would be Julia Cameron's morning pages. She wrote a whole book about this, and I'll link that down below. Basically, what the idea of morning pages is that you are trying to write for a certain amount of time or for a certain length, and you're just trying to write completely uncensored. And this is the key to both morning pages and any kind of brain dump. Sometimes you have so many thoughts and you don't let yourself say them. Either you're embarrassed by them, maybe you feel some shame about them. That is the voice of a censor in your head. And we want to get past the censor so that we can at the very least, be honest with ourselves. The brain dump really encourages you to be honest, because if you're really in the moment in a brain dump, if you're really in the moment while doing your morning pages, you don't have time to lie to yourself. I know some people rely on morning pages every day, and if so, that's great. For me, I like to use other methods of journaling, but then my brain dumps are just like when I need to get ideas out there. Now, a kind of journaling that I love to do is, I'm just gonna call it reading journaling. And reading journaling can come in a couple of different types or forms or varieties. Basically, this is just a kind of journaling that is in response to something that you're reading. If you're like me and you're a big reader, then you're always going to have something to write about. So that's very useful. Now, sometimes these are like reading reflections. It's like really critically going through what you're reading. I find this to be really great when I'm like reading philosophy, for instance, because I just like want to incorporate those ideas into my life. And so I would use those texts as a kind of way to do reflections. Another kind of journaling is just a commonplace book. And I've made a couple of videos about commonplace books. I'll link to one down below as well. But the idea of a commonplace book is where you just take quotes and ideas that you encounter from other books or movies or TV or whatever, and you kind of put them into one place. I keep a physical commonplace book, but I know lots of people who like to use something like Obsidian for this, where they're just collecting quotes and then putting them into pages and creating links between the pages. There are people who could teach you about that stuff way better than I could, so you'd have to look elsewhere on YouTube. When I read on a Kindle and I want to highlight things and I want to preserve them, I use an app called Readwise. It is a subscription, which I don't love, but it turns out to be just a really useful one, at least for me. And this lets you easily export all of your Kindle notes into something like Roam or Obsidian, or just to see them in one place so you can write them down by hand. Either way, what that's doing is letting me keep sort of a digital version of a commonplace book where great ideas or quotes that I'm encountering in what I read don't get lost because I just forget about them. The point of all of this journaling really just is to help us become more reflective, but also to enjoy our lives. So I would love to hear what kind of journaling is helping you do that, or a kind of journaling that I missed out. Let me know down below.